Upgrade your game day with Team Toyota. Headed to the practice fields or the stadium? We have a great selection of new trucks and SUVs to choose from. And with our lineup of over 200 certified used Toyotas, you can find the right fit for you or for your budget. 75 used cars under $20K. Don't get stuck on the sidelines. Our service centers are here to get you back on the road in no time. Visit one of our 3 locations in Princeton, Langhorne, or Glen Mills, or online at teamtoyota.net.
Hello and welcome to one final Winter Meetings edition of the Phillies Talk podcast. I am Corey Seidman. He's Spencer McKercher here at the Hilton Anatole in Dallas one last time. Winter Meetings concluded today with the Rule 5 draft, and the Phillies lost an interesting pitcher, which we'll get to a little bit later. But big news early in the day that the Red Sox acquired Garrett Crochet, the left-handed pitcher from the White Sox, that the Phillies had been interested in at last year's deadline. There was some thought that the Phillies were in on him this year as well, this offseason. But, with Crochet, the difference is if you acquired him at the deadline last year, that's 3 years of control versus 2 years of control. So if you're the Phillies, you're probably not parting with as big of a package for him now as you were in July. And, listening to Dave Dombrowski today, the Phillies just don't want to trade their top prospects, Aiden Miller, Andrew Painter. You never say never to anything, but those guys are so close to contributing for this team that they just want to wait it out.
Exactly. And, the Red Sox, what they gave up a good amount. Don't know if the Phillies could have compared to that, but yeah, it'd been like giving up, Crawford and some top guys there. So, happy for the Red Sox, I guess. And at least the trade market now is finally kind of picking up a little bit. That was the big fish in the market. Goes to the Red Sox, like you said, 2 years under control. Could the Phillies benefit from that? Yes. But as you alluded to, Dave Dombrowski, when we talked to him today, kind of laid out that it was going to be tough. They don't want to give up these top name guys. They have a feeling that they like these guys a lot. They have a feeling that we could see them here in the near future. So, yeah.
And Dave Dombrowski said, the goal is always to win, but not to win at any cost. And, you don't want to make a bad trade. Like there was a rumor on Wednesday about Kyle Tucker that the teams like the Yankees are in on him, the Cubs, and Joel Sherman in the New York Post also mentioned the Phillies as being one team that's checked in on him. Kyle Tucker, though, he'd be a rental player. He's a great player, maybe one of the top 10 position players in baseball. But you get him, you only have him under contract for 1 year, then you might have to re-sign him for like $350 million. So you don't want to trade top prospects for a guy and then have to pay him all that money. You're just giving up too much, even if it might make you, better this year. In looking at what the Astros might want, I would think the Astros reportedly are after major league ready infielders. Well, Alec Boehm's a major league ready infielder, but if you're the Phillies, you're trading. That's a tough proposition. 2 years of Boehm for 1 year of Tucker. I don't know about that. But again, especially when it comes to guys like Miller and Painter, that you can have under control for 7 years in your own system. The value of that far exceeds the value of a player you might be able to acquire today. And Dombrowski said that would the Phillies have liked to have gotten more accomplished this week beyond Jordan Romano? Yes, but that on Tuesday that they were heavy into some talks with teams, but that it didn't materialize. And he said at that point, then there was some thought in the room what about this? What about that? And he said no, let's take a step back and let's not overreact. Let's not do something just to do it. There's still a lot of off season left.
Right, they're staying patient.
Yeah, just because they didn't complete things this week doesn't mean it all ends this week. There's still a lot of interesting players out there.
A lot of time before spring training.
Yeah, and a lot of the top outfielders remain out there. Teoscar Hernandez didn't sign yet. Santander didn't sign yet. George Profar didn't sign yet. Yep. So a lot of options for the Phillies, both in free agency and in trade. And I know fans would have liked to come away from this with more than just Jordan Romano, but at least one of the major holes is filled. And I still just, I still don't get the sense they're going to run it back. I see people saying they're just going to bring the same team back, but I just don't see it. I mean, there's two things can be true at once. You're not going to make a trade just for the sake of making a trade, but I just also can't see that same lineup 1 through 9 coming back next year.
No, and I feel like you said, I also have the same feeling as you but it seems like every time we talk to Rob Thompson and Dave Dombrowski, we talk to them one-on-one on Monday and Tuesday, and Topper even said, we're a good team. They are. We're not, saying that they're not. It just, you fall short 3 straight years here. There's got to be some sort of improvement, whether that's, going to get somebody in the free agency, going to get somebody in the trade market. But, we talked to Scott Boras today, and obviously he came out and was asked about Alec Boehm's trade availability. And, Scott Boras came out straight and said that Alec Boehm was the third baseman for the Philadelphia Phillies. He didn't get any sense that they were shopping him. So, I don't know. I guess there's still a lot of moves to be made. And even, here during a lot of the other teams didn't really make a lot of moves, right? There was a few here and there sprinkled in, but Yeah, just because that we didn't do anything or the Phillies didn't do anything here in the winter meetings does not mean that they're not still looking to improve.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that they're definitely not going to trade Bohm, but it would have to be for the right price. Like there was a report from the Seattle Times that the Phillies sought George Kirby or Logan Gilbert for Bohm. I mean, that would be, if you're the Phillies, that would be a suitable return because those are like 2 top 10 American League pitchers. But if you're the Mariners, it's probably not enough. It's hard to match up with a team like that. And, this could, prolong into January into February. We'll see. But among the other things Boras said, he addressed the Bryce Harper contract situation. He was asked about it because, Harper after this Juan Soto deal, it's just crazy to look at. You have Soto making $51 million a year. You have Harper making $25.38 million a year, less than half. Harper's contract now ranks 28th among active players in annual average value, which is crazy. I mean, and that's because he chose to have no opt-outs. If he did have opt-outs and he did opt out over the last couple of years, he would have gotten a way bigger contract.
For sure.
Look at what happened with Manny Machado, for example. So Boras said that that the communication's been really good between John Middleton, Dave Dombrowski, and himself, and that Middleton in March spoke about this. He said that he wants Harper to retire as a Philly, and he expects that the Phillies are going to get something done in terms of rework, contract, or extension. He just didn't know when. And, that was back when the Phillies had more immediate fish to fry. They had to re-sign Aaron Nola. They wanted to extend Zach Wheeler. So my sense is that if something does happen this offseason with Harper, it would probably be closer to spring training after the free agent and trade process wraps up and teams can focus specifically on their own guys.
Do you think that's a possibility this spring, or is it kind of still down the road sort of thing?
It could happen. I mean, it could happen this spring. It could happen next spring.
Right.
The fact that Harper's contract runs through his age 39 season and he's talked about wanting to play into his 40s.
Yep.
I really do get the sense that when that contract is reworked, it's going to come in the form of an extension. It's not just going to be okay, we're giving you X amount more per year. That's not what's going to happen. They're going to tack some more years onto it and to get him to a higher place because he deserves it.
Yeah,
He's been said beyond just obviously the on-field impact. He's the face of the franchise. He sells a ton of jerseys. He generates a lot of buzz locally and nationally. And and it's such a team-friendly deal. The day that Harper signed that deal was the richest ever, and within a couple of weeks it wasn't, and then within a couple years it transitioned to being one of the most team-friendly contracts in all of baseball. It's really helped the Phillies.
It really has, and like you said, the opt-out and him deciding not to have an opt-out clause, awesome, it's beautiful, and obviously Phillies fans will, as this years go on, and now we're entering year 7, correct, of the which is insane to think about. I think Phillies fans are starting to appreciate more that opt-out clause wasn't a thing for Bryce because he wanted to be here. He wanted to help bring a championship to the Philadelphia Phillies, and one day we'll get there. I have a good feeling.
So the Phillies in the Rule 5 draft on Wednesday, they lost starting pitcher Iverson Castellano, who had a pretty good year last year. He was the Phillies Paul Owens Award winner, which is the top award they give to their top position player and pitcher in the minor leagues. And it was that this past year, it was Castellano among pitchers. And the Phillies thought that there was a chance they might lose him. They didn't protect him in the Rule 5 draft. They didn't add him to the 40-man roster like they did with Gene Cabrera, Mick Abel, and Moisés Chassé. And he was selected by the Twins, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And so, the Phillies lose a pitcher there. Dave Dombrowski's rationale was that the 40-man roster spots are precious. The Phillies are at 39 right now on their 40-man roster spot. Might end up having to clear some more spaces if they make other additions this offseason. But you also have to factor in that with the stipulations of the Rule 5 draft, you have to stay on a team's big league roster for a full season unless you're injured. And if not, then you have to be offered back to your team at half price. So, it remains to be seen if a team like the Twins is going to be able to keep Castellano on its major league roster all season. Probably not, unless he really performs or they have a bunch of injuries, in which case Phillies might end up back with him anyway. And the Phillies did make a pick in the major league portion of the Rule 5 draft, but they're not keeping it.
Yeah, Mike Vassell from the Mets there, 8th round pick in 2021. Big guy, big arm, but Dave Dombrowski said they didn't end up keeping it. Announced that they made the trade for cash considerations. Big time ball player, cash considerations. But didn't announce what team it is. But they get rid of that. Then like we said, they added a bunch of guys in the minor league, draft outfielders, some pitchers as well. So were you surprised that they didn't keep that or no?
No, I mean that happens a lot in the Rule 5 draft, and that news will come out soon as to who they traded him to. The reason you didn't find out just yet is because that team didn't want it announced yet. But that wraps up the winter meetings. There's a lot of offseason left. We've seen big developments this week in terms of Juan Soto. Max Fried went to the Yankees, so you have a top pitcher off the board. You have the top player.
He's out of the NL East.
It's big. I mean, and so now all the attention is going to shift to Bregman, Corbin Burns.
Or even trade candidates like Bellinger. Bellinger's getting talked about.
Because also, you've seen the Yankees and Red Sox pivot after the Mets got Soto. The Yankees pivot and got Fried. The Red Sox pivot and get Crochet. So the teams that miss out, they're going to have things to do. I think the Blue Jays, Dodgers probably still going to do a little bit more. And the Phillies, as things stand, I still think this is even if they don't do a ton else this offseason, one of the top 4 rosters in the National League: Dodgers, Phillies, Mets, Braves. Because you look at the rest of the landscape in the NL, it's not a ton of teams that spend. It's not a ton of teams that have like big time veteran star level talent. So it's not, despite the relative inactivity to this point, if I'm a Phillies fan, I'm not too upset about where they are.
No, and it doesn't seem like Dave Dombrowski is upset either. He loves this team, and there's the roster's guy, and they believe he even said today that the roster that's currently all the guys on it believe that they are good enough to win the World Series as well. And I don't blame him for having that thought. I mean, when this roster was constructed, even 2-3 years ago now, when they added Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos, extended Zach Wheeler, extended Aaron Nola, it came to be that like this was going to be the roster that wins the World Series eventually. And I'm still confident in them. And I just think, there could be 1 or 2 more missing pieces that would be added. Obviously, the 5th starting spot is still wide open. Dave said that, he would be open to having that be a minor league guy, right? Try to bring somebody up here, or Taijuan Walker, of course, as well. Somebody on the roster currently. So
that'll be a big competition. It'll be an open competition among internal candidates. Taijuan Walker and probably a couple like low dollar signings they make this offseason. But you had a chance to talk to get some perspective from Ruben Amaro and Chuck Garfien on a whole host of things, didn't you?
Oh yeah, dude. We talked to Dick Allen, or we talked about Dick Allen with Ruben and Chuck Garfien, formerly the NBC Sports Chicago host of first the White Sox pre and post game, now working for the Chicago Sports Network, and of course our good buddy Ruben Amaro Jr., who offered his take on a lot of good things, including Dick Allen and what the Phillies should do here as the offseason continues. Here with our very own Ruben Amaro Jr. Ruben, obviously down here in the winter meetings, a lot of busy stuff going on, a lot of good stuff going on. But I want to start with the news that came out on Sunday first, with Dick Allen being elected to the Hall of Fame. Long overdue, right?
Yeah.
He, one of the better Phillies players of all time. Obviously, his OPS in that 10-year span from 1964 to 1974 was just a little bit lower than Hank Aaron. What are your initial thoughts on Dick Allen finally getting the Hall of Fame?
Just relief more than anything else. I was so happy for him, for he and the family. I've talked so many times with my dad about his overall talent and his knowledge of the game. People don't know him, didn't get a chance to really know him all that well. That sort of seemed to happen to a lot of third basemen over the years in Philadelphia, but a great third baseman. But this is a guy that put up unbelievable numbers, but what an athlete. My dad used to talk about all the time, used to rank those players that he played with or against over the years. I mean, he had obviously Willie Mays at the top and Hank Aaron. Then he had Mickey Mantle, who my dad played with, and then Roberto Clemente, who he played against. But then right there underneath them, I mean, it was Dick Allen. And awesome. Dick Allen, over those 11 years, 12 years, was just phenomenal. And just what a talent. He could run the bases, he could hit for power, he could do a lot of different things. Obviously, Mike Schmidt, best third baseman of all time, but man, this obviously he also finally gets an opportunity to be recognized appropriately.
It's awesome, and to see his family's reaction, right? Waiting years and years and seeing that emotion made me emotional. I'm sure you as well, right?
Yeah, I've gotten to know the family just a little bit over the years, maybe more than a little bit, and it was really special. Obviously, would love to have had him get there before he passed.
Yep.
God bless him and his family, but really a wonderful honor, and you got to give John Middleton a lot of credit too, because he really pushed that initiative. Obviously, a big fan of his as he grew up in watching baseball in Philadelphia as well. So really cool to have honored him prior to in the ballpark, and then for him to be honored as a Hall of Famer. It's pretty awesome.
It's awesome, and I mentioned it with Corey on the Phillies Talk podcast. That ceremony, the Phillies always do it so great, right? With all of their ceremonies, that was one of the best ones. That's one of the I get chills thinking about it right now. It was fantastic. Switching gears real quick, obviously the other big news on Sunday, Juan Soto, the big domino has fallen. As a former GM, we'll start with this. Did you ever expect to see 700 plus, let alone 765?
Well, I mean, obviously with what happened last year with Ohtani, you're talking about a guy who was like a once-in-a-generation type of a talent. That sort of set the tone, but to put the 7 number in front of everything, I was just surprised by the overall, the fact that none of this money's deferred. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised by the $50 million, $51 million AAV. That doesn't surprise me as much because they've gotten to the 40s already, but the length of the contract,
yes.
You add that I mean, he surpassed every record you could be, 500, 600, 700 million as far as present day value. And that's a pretty extraordinary thing. You got to give, I don't like doing it all that much, but you have to give Scott Boras a lot of love, man. I mean, he did what he was supposed to do for his client. Great player. Hit at the right time because he got to the big leagues at 19, became a free agent at 26, and age means so much, and for him to be able to, to command that kind of contract, it's extraordinary. There's no question. I don't know if it's going to be great for the game, bad for the game, great for the players, no doubt. But we'll see how it works out. Mets still have a lot to do.
That they do. A lot of holes in that lineup still.
Yeah.
We'll worry about the Mets down the road. Let's talk about the Phillies right now. Obviously, Alec Boehm, Ranger Suarez, some of these names that are being thrown out there in the trade market. Now that the big domino fell, do you expect the free agent market to open up or the trade market? Obviously, both. What do you expect more here, though?
Yeah, I just feel like I know that there are people trying to do business, trying to make trades, and also trying to sign players. I think what you're going to see with the Teoscar Hernandezes of the world and the Alex Bregmans, because they're sort of the next tier offensive players, and Peter Alonso as well. I think what you're going to see is they're going to wait to see if those numbers continue to get dragged up. Because, I mean, there's no Sotos there, but they're still really good players and valuable players. And there's a lot of teams that need these types of players. So it will be interesting. I think that next tier of players may go a little more slowly. But you have seen some guys go down as far as the pitching is concerned, because I think people are starting to realize, man, starting pitching really does mean something. And it means a lot. And so you see the Snells go off the board. You see Clay Holmes adjusting to maybe being a starter. You see Hoffman maybe adjusting to trying to be a starter because there's a huge demand. They're realizing, and I think rightly so, that eating up innings as a starting pitcher is huge. Yeah. You cannot put the strain on the bullpens like they have been over the last several years and think that they can continue to survive.
Exactly. And obviously the Phillies boosted their bullpen yesterday with the signing of Jordan Romano. Your initial thoughts on the Romano signing? They've kind of alluded that maybe this could be it. The bullpen they're happy with their bullpen right now, which means Carlos Estevez, Jeff Hoffman could be not returning. But your thoughts on the Romano signing?
Yeah, I think it's a placeholder signing. I think it's a good, I mean, to me, it's like a little bit of a low risk, high reward, only because it's a 1-year deal. Right. And I think that's important. I think it's one of those deals where they're hoping that he can get back to his physical form. This guy was an outstanding back end of the bullpen guy for a couple of years there after 2020. I mean, really pitched very, very well. You have to hope that he is healthy. That's the biggest thing for him. And if he can come back healthy, I mean, he's definitely going to be a plus. But I actually feel like it's more of a placeholder deal. I know that Dave's probably trying to temper expectations of the fans in a lot of ways. And, he can't go out there and say, hey, we got more to do. Because that sort of tips his hand as far as the rest of the industry is concerned. So he's got to be a little coy about that. But I do believe that they're going to continue to try to work on some things. I think there's more to come.
For sure. And we'll wrap up with that. Perfect example. Christmas is coming, obviously. Winter meetings, obviously. It's beautiful here in Dallas. Who's on your wish list?
Oof. I mean, I really like, the players that I like, and I don't know if they fit the team, but I think the type of players that they can bring in, I love Alex Bregman. I do love, obviously, starting pitching depth that they can somehow add to the top of that rotation. You have a couple of pitchers in that top of the rotation who have logged a lot of innings over the last few years. You're not sure if they're going to continue to be healthy. You'd love to have another guy that sort of help buoy that in case something does happen. Obviously, none of us want anything to happen to these guys.
Right.
But they have logged a lot of innings, and you're hopeful that they can stay healthy. That said, I'm about, adding a different type of a hitter, maybe somebody who makes a little more contact, a Christian Walker who can drive in some runs. There's some guys that I think that can help this team. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if it's in the budget. I don't know if that, but if it was up my wish list, the couple of those players would be fun to grab.
Exactly, and obviously Tyler O'Neill going to the Orioles, that 4-year, 3-year deal, $49 million. That kind of sets the market for guys like Jerson Profar and Anthony Santander. Who knows what the Phillies could do with those guys, right? Ruben Amaro Jr., our analyst on NBC Sports Philadelphia on Phillies pregame, postgame. Also on the Phillies show with Todd Zaleski and our good buddy Jim Salisbury. Give that a follow. Give that a listen. Ruben, thank you so much.
Good to see you, Cobra.
Always good seeing you, buddy.
Right,
Here with Chuck Garfien, Chicago Sports Network, formerly NBC Sports Chicago. Chuck, there's been a lot of big news coming from Chicago and Philly. We'll start with Dick Allen, recently elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame finally. Your thoughts on that?
Well, in Chicago, I mean, he was a hero from 1972 to 1974. He won the MVP in 72. And to put things in perspective, for people in Philadelphia, what happened with him in Chicago, things were really bleak for the White Sox franchise. And there are a lot of people around that time who felt that Dick Allen saved the franchise. I mean, there was talk about the White Sox leaving town, and here comes Dick Allen, comes to the White Sox, wins the MVP, and all this excitement came back to the White Sox franchise. So he means a lot to that generation of Sox fans. And when you consider that he missed getting into Cooperstown twice by one vote.
It's crazy.
And then to get in, and I was in the room when they made the announcement, and there was his son and his grandson, and you saw the emotion that had just been building and building, and as we all know, he unfortunately passed away a few years ago. So this is a big deal for Dick Allen and his family. It means a lot in Philadelphia and certainly in Chicago as well.
That's a perfect way to put it. The emotion that came out of his family, right? And the numbers speak for themselves too, right? 7-time All-Star, the numbers were right behind Hank Aaron and all that stuff with OPS when that stat was not even tracked really back then. So really happy for Dick Allen and his entire family. Kind of transition here. Garrett Crochet obviously is the big talking point, right? Maybe the biggest trade target right now here in the winter meetings. The Phillies are linked to him, along with a lot of other teams. Tell Philadelphia, obviously being around Garrett sometimes, tell Philadelphia what they could expect from Garrett Crochet if they end up with Garrett Crochet.
Yeah, I mean, I've known Crochet since the White Sox drafted him originally, and I remember talking to him at spring training last year, and he was like, I want to be a starter. And we're all like, all right, you have pitched 25 innings total in the minor leagues and major leagues the previous 2 seasons combined. You want to be a starter. How are you going to get from point A to point Z, end of the season, as a starter? You don't have a foundation built. But he went to Chris Getz, GM of the White Sox, and said, this is what I want to do. And his whole thing was this, because people couldn't understand it. His body, according to him, his body works best on the 5-day routine, not as a reliever.
Yep.
It just that's what works best for him. And he felt more comfortable about staying healthy, going 150 innings, pitching every 5 days versus as a reliever and having to prepare for that. And sure enough, I mean, he proved, I don't want to say proved everyone wrong, but he proved a lot of people who were skeptical and questioned whether he could do it. I mean, why would you feel like, oh yeah, sure, go ahead? It really hadn't been done before. He's a great competitor. He's an animal on the mound. Any team that gets him is going to be very, very glad to have Garrett Crochet. And as someone who covers the White Sox, if you're going to get Garrett Crochet, can you give us your best prospects? We need hitting prospects. We need a lot of good hitters, so bring them on, because we're not just going to give you Garrett Crochet.
Of course not. Of course not. That's a great transition. I mean, what would you expect the package to look like? Would it be Alec Bohm, Johan Rojas,
We do not want Alec Bohm. No offense to Alec Bohm.
Yeah, no worries.
He doesn't fit into what the White Sox want and need. This is a team that's not ready to win next year or the year after. They need younger players who are either on the cusp or are younger, but high-end prospects and hitters. They need position players in the biggest way.
More than pitching?
More than pitching. So when I look at the Phillies prospects just on the surface, that's not as great of a match as, say, the Mets, the Orioles, Red Sox. But listen, at the end of the day, the White Sox are going to want the best deal. And if at the end of the day, the Phillies give them what they feel is the best deal, then there's your match.
Absolutely. And obviously Mick Gable is out there. Justin Crawford is out there. Just a few names. And I'm sure that the Chicago faithful will be happy with either one of them. But like you said, going to be a tough competition for everyone else as well. So, Chuck, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, good stuff, Spence. That was some interesting perspective from those two guys. And that's going to wrap it up this week at the Hilton Anatole. The winter meetings come to an end. Spence and I are going to hop on our planes, get back to Philadelphia, frigid weather. But this was, the Phillies got some things accomplished this week. I think you and I got some things accomplished this week.
Yeah, we did, buddy.
It's always cool to see so many people around baseball in the same spot in one time. Like I was saying the other day that went downstairs to the lobby at like 5 a.m. to get a bottle of water, and Nelson Cruz is sitting there by himself, like reading a book. You never know who you're going to see.
And we saw our good buddy Gabe Kapler as well,
Gabe
right?
Kapler,
And
Matt Klentak.
Yeah,
we could have had a podcast about the 2018 season.
That still needs to be in the works. I think that'd be amazing.
All right, that's going to do it for this Phillies Talk. He's Spencer. I am Corey. We'll catch you soon.